All right. Once again, here's a really idea that I'm going to want to pitch to somebody out there who's somebody more diligent than myself. I've had this idea since basically Trump, you know, got elected, and they started. I noticed how the media was all about just like no news, no updates, no perspective, no economics, no reporting, no follow through on what's happening. Yemen, like it's one day maybe it's front and center, but then we never no follow. We don't have no idea what's happening in Yemen. So we get rid of the news and replace it all with kind of fear, freak out, and that all began. But here's the book idea. The book idea is it's really like the great rollback of rights. Okay, so you start with some cool, or maybe it's a movie. You start with some cool shots in the early 70s and sort of blue collar, middle class, working class, got lots of rights. They own their house, they own 2 cars, kids going to college, no student debt, And then you have these guys at meeting in this room like Paul Wayrick and Lewis Powell, right? The guy who wrote the Powell memo. So you have them like meeting in secret rooms, like, the working class after they made us stop the Vietnam War and stuff like that, and got civil rights and got all feminist and stuff. Like they're all like rights oriented, and they're used to leisure time and getting paid for their work. Like we have to do the rollback, the great rollback, right? And this is historic. This is what they actually did have these meetings and said we got to do the rollback, and that yielded the Powell memo very famously, and Paul Roywich he said, well, hey, you know what? There's all these like new evangelical people in the South. They're all kind of freaked out because of like President Carter and stuff. And so what we're going to do is like weaponize them, like, right? Get them all freaked out on like unsolvable social issues that don't mean jack diddly to us. We don't care about abortion or discussion of gun control. It matters nothing to the super elites or running everything. But let's just keep that front and center in front of them at all times. Let's keep them focused on, gays and gay rights and abortion and stuff like that. These unsolvable social issues that have no bearing on global economics or the things that the hedge funders really cared about, right? And so that was actually their plan. Paul Rayridge famously worked with the moral majority, and they distribute all these voter guides, and they really kind of get the great rollback going by getting the plebes, the working class, focused on stuff that doesn't matter and just forget it. Now they're going to really kick in high gear this thing that becomes called neoliberal economics, coming from sort of Leo Strauss, Chicago school. This is getting underway. Later, Milton Friedman would advance this. This agenda, by the way, is advanced by Democrats and by Republicans. Reaganomics is sort of given a lot of credit for it, but it's not really his. Clinton, Robert Rubin, wow, Larry Summers. I mean, they took it to new crazy levels. But anyway, so there's this new emphasis: abortion, gays, guns, prayer in schools. Oh my God, godless culture. And then you're bringing in the neoliberal economics, laissez-faire, the invisible hand, Chicago School, Strauss, Milton Friedman. Meritocracy, that gets replaced by the meritocracy. Right, and this brings us fast forward into Obama's administration. People like Victoria Nuland and Larry Summers and Timothy Geithner, Robert Rubin still, now in the Obama administration. Now this gets fused with the high-tech surveillance state, kind of CIA, deep state, quote unquote, right? Which I call the steady state. But these things start to fuse. So you have like John Brennan, right? And Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs really captures both political parties almost completely at this time, going into this time. All admins, super well represented. Bill Clinton's administration, Robert Rubin, of course, Citigroup, Hillary, too, Larry Summers, Timothy Geithner already said this, Hank Paulson, Steve Mnuchin, 2008, 2009 bailouts, okay, they got bailed out, we got sold out. No significant reforms. After 2008, 2009, we didn't go back to Glass-Steagall. We didn't boost up FDIC, separate sort of like regular people's holdings in banks from like investment gambler people, what they're doing with your money. Didn't do any of those. Nothing really happened after 2000, 2008. Even after Occupy, famously, right? We got nothing after that. Really got nothing. That was really too bad. So, then you fast forward, oh my God, to no significant reforms. 2020, oh, Spectre, crazy, COVID, oh my God, lockdown, quantitative easing. Where's all the money go? Hedge funders, offshore it. Boom. They loot the treasury. It's gone. Boom. It's gone. And we get stuck with more debt and inflation after that. Who knew? So after the lockdowns and they quash the economy, just smash it. We're going to have to, still the rent's really high, but you can't pay it. So I guess, looks like BlackRock bought up half of the rental property in town. Looks like they're just going to kind of take over a lot more property, huh? Looks like they're just going to own a lot of stuff, Looks like you plebes are just going to pay a lot more and not be able to eat red meat anymore. We're going to start to roll in the kind of WEF kind of, globalist plan to make the plebes eat bugs and stuff. We're going to start with that agenda, right? And, you got acronym. Oh, yeah, also the ruining of democracy at the level of the primaries. So you got the plebes all focused on the fact that Donald Trump won in 2016. But what, they didn't want you to notice is everything they did in the primary to actually block Bernie. So the real subversion of democracy happened when the Democratic Party went all in on supporting their corporate DNC toadies and blocking Bernie. But nobody leftists, nobody cares, nobody's talking about that. They're all freaked out on Orange Man bad, the whole specter of Trump, right? So they're playing that perfectly. Specter of Trump is just always waved out there. And so the kind of corporate Democrats can do whatever they want. And people like Chris Hedges are kind of trying to point out, hey, there's kind of a creeping corporate coup that's actually happened. They're happy to kind of work with both parties. Doesn't seem to matter to them if it's a Republican or a Democrat in the House. They don't seem to care. And actually, nothing that Trump really did was all that much more extreme. When you really consider it in terms of what he said, some crazy stuff, and of course as a specter, at his rallies when he's like, "Hey, get that guy," about the black dude in the audience. Whatever, he did some stuff like that to got everybody super triggered, super focused on what a hyper racist he is, and everyone forgot about what a real super racist actually Biden and Hillary are, the DNC. But nobody can see it, nobody cares. Acronym, fast forward to 2020, oh my God. They wanted to block Bernie really bad. He was about ready to take Iowa. And whoever takes Iowa usually goes on to win the nomination of the Democratic Party. We'd have been living in a different world, okay? So they blocked him twice. They blocked him in 2016, shenanigans, and then in 2020 it was even worse, okay? They had this app. They rolled out this app. They even called it the Shadow app. And somehow people just they couldn't figure out, who did I vote for? I don't know. There was no verification. Nobody knew. But Bernie was a super strong winner going into the Iowa night. Somehow they declared it for Pete Buttigieg at the end of that, because Shadow app, ooh, wow, and you had McGowan, what's her name? DNC insiders and Palantir people involved in this app, this shadowy app made by Acronym. And, but nobody seemed to notice. And then, the shenanigans just continued. Gavel brought down early on Bernie voters in Nevada. And then they were blamed because somebody threw a chair, the media completely in tow. By this time, you have the steady state of John Brennan, and you have, the CIA and every three-letter agency you can think of, combined with the DNC, and combined with MSNBC and the media, New York Times, Atlantic even gets a new editor. He sucks. Everybody just sucks. The media sucks. They're all super pro DNC and pro this idea that it doesn't matter how bad they are, Jeff, because however bad they are, they're not nearly as bad as crazy Trump. Oh my God, So that whole game gets going on, and then you get the rollback of rights, right? This idea that we're just going to have to live with more surveillance, and then we have to monitor speech now, that we can't handle our own ideas anymore. If somebody goes on social media and says some things, oh my God, Bernie bros, they're offensive, whatever, voting for Jill Stein, oh my God, So we have to control ourselves, control speech and block doctors. And this gets even more reinforced with the COVID, right? So like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the guy who invented the mRNA vaccine himself, Dr. Robert Malone, all these people are saying, hey, maybe we could use some early treatment and save some lives. And people think, no, we want to be Pfizer dependent, completely stuck on, the right, remedies. And we don't want to know about monoclonal antibodies. Rich people can get monoclonal antibodies. Poor people, hey, no, nothing works. So crisis, fear, destabilization, rollback of rights, inoculation of fear, and this culture that can only wait for unelected authorities like the CDC, the WHO, and Dr. Fauci and stuff, who blew it on the AIDS response, to then tell them what is legal and safe under their ongoing emergency conditions, right? So we're always under perpetual emergency, perpetual crisis now, never going back to normal, never getting a time to breathe and think and analyze and ask for things like affordable health care, right? Never going to do that. Or why are we always in war? What the, oh my gosh, undeclared wars. Like what happened to congressional war powers? So we never even get anywhere near any of those questions. The left is just completely lost doing this weird dance of identity politics with itself, and never actually gets around to real infrastructural, real economic questions. It's always just dancing around this specter of how bad Trump is, okay? And psychological operations, one right after the other. Russiagate, Ukrainegate, Bountygate, bungled impeachment things, and here comes the virus. And it's a virus like no other. Doesn't respond to antibodies, can't be accurately tested for. Remember, test kits don't work, they don't have they don't have the proper gear, the story keeps changing the bar, changing the story. Classic psychological operation. It's like what they do to you in prison when one guard comes by and says, hey, why is your door left open? I thought you're supposed to have your door closed at all times, and then the next guard comes over later, hey, why is your door closed? We told you to leave it open. That's kind of what they did to you with the COVID. Like, oh, mask, no, don't wear a mask, that's selfish. Okay, why you're not wearing a mask? You know what I mean? Hey, get the vaccine, it's going to stop the spread, right? And then you get the vaccine, it's like, well, doesn't really stop the spread, does it? It prevents you from going to the hospital. Okay, so it's still really good, but no, we still have to really browbeat you and mandate it for everyone, even though it doesn't really stop the spread. And oh God, natural immunity, we have to actually mandate it for people that have already recovered from COVID, even though they have better immunity than anybody else, right? So it doesn't matter. You still have to get, the thing. And we're going to mandate that you take it no matter what. And so this just kind of keeps on going on. Boom, fast forward January 6th. Trump supporters, oh my God, domestic terrorist, protest. They're not just protesters. It's an insurrection, Jeff. It's crazy, what they did. It's no way. Don't compare it to what the Black Lives Matter did when they burned and actually killed more people in the previous summer. Don't even think about that, because these are domestic terrorists now, and that is the number one focus of the DHS and all the three-letter agencies now, is focusing on people like a third of the country that maybe voted for Trump. Let's just kind of all lump them together and start raiding their houses with the FBI, doing all this kind of crazy stuff in the name of January 6th. So there's always like a specter. There's always a scary thing, right? It's like the Plato's kind of allegory of the cave thing. You know what I mean? Where like they keep the citizens facing one way, just looking at the shadows, and they're back there manipulating, creating these big monster shadows on the wall. And they don't ever want the citizens to turn around and see that it's them. It's like Raytheon and West Exec and Goldman Sachs and MSNBC, and they're all in bed together. They've already colluded and become the same sort of homogenous sort of thing that's controlling the plebes, taking rights away and downgrading your diet and ruining the economy and doing all this stuff now. And nobody wants to see it. It's sort of just like this total thing that's happening. You know what I mean? So anyway, this is a book, and it's like you kind of weave that in with sort of like a manufacturing consent, kind of thing, some sort of a, media critique, what happened to people's mind, sort of psychology critique of what it's like to be on the internet, and what that has done to people, not just social media, but yes, definitely including social media, the interactiveness of that, and how that is now being censored so heavily. Censorship, the censorship industrial complex. Start talking about that. This is where it's all going, right? So we're controlling the mind, and we've always got the specter they want to have in front of your mind, whatever you're supposed to be concerned about according to them, but you're never getting down to asking these fundamental questions again of like, hey, where's my normal health care? Only just 10, 15 years ago, my company was paying for my health care, or my premium was like $150. And if I needed an MRI, I could kind of get one. Now it's way jacked up. The HMO, the private equity. Basically, why is private equity sucking this economy dry, right? And there's nothing left for the producers, the working class people that produce things. They are just kind of asked to pay more taxes, do more. Their contribution from them, higher productivity, everything. But they're not getting actual health care anymore. And this even after a pandemic, right? After all the money was spent on with PR and ad agencies, right? The ad council telling you to wash your hands a million times, and nice ads on buses and trains everywhere, and telling you to be afraid of each other. This horrible specter about ineffective things. So anyway, let's get control back. Somebody needs to write a great book about this. This has happened, starting with the Powell memo, the rollback, going forward to Dr. Fauci, and just this psychological operation. Bring in Plato's allegory of the cave. Bring in some manufacturing consent, some Neil Postman, amusing ourselves to death. Basically, during the pandemic, what they want you to do, go in and watch Netflix and buy medical marijuana and just smoke too much indica and don't ask questions about what's happening to your economy. And now it's like your choices are so much more limited. And BlackRock has really bought up a lot of the rental property. The Black Panthers, radicals used to realize like, hey, if we don't own any of the land in our community, we haven't really made any gains. If we're not controlling the food production in our area, then we don't really have any independence, do we? Right? So that's the kind of thing we need to get back to. We need like an organic gardening movement. As crazy as that sounds, that's what will keep us safe. Better quality food, essential fatty acids, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, not commercially produced food by them, by the enemy, by the corporate global Nazis that are trying to control everything and have us immersed in perpetual war now. A war they keep moving the goalpost, right? Oh yeah, in Ukraine, we're going to just, oh gosh, look, we're going to provoke, Putin has been the target for a long time. They hate Putin. And now the goalpost is not just to like protect Ukraine, because that's over. Ukraine's being sacrificed to weapons dealers. We're just pumping weapons money through it. And the weapons are actually falling in the hands of Russians. It's horrible. It's a horrible debacle. It's going horribly. There's no peace movement to talk about it, to look at it, to demand things. And when I was growing up and getting, half of my babysitters had peace patches on their pants, and the other half had a picture of their brother who was over in Vietnam, right? People they really were a little bit more close to reality back then. Now it's just this big giant specter. Nobody knows what the heck is happening in Ukraine. Nobody has any idea what's going on over there. Or, who's joining NATO, or what kind of red lines were crossed, or what kind of promises were made to Gorbachev. And what the specter of nukes now. It's like we're willing to risk a nuclear war just to keep the specter going, and to keep the weapons sales going, and to keep supporting the steady state, and roles are getting crossed. You get people like Tucker Carlson who talks about this stuff. And of course he gets pushed off, and he's some big racist or something. Anybody that doesn't, anybody that says anything against the real power, Raytheon, West Exec, Jen Psaki, Anthony Blinken, West Exec, look into that. John Brennan, okay? Those are the real people. Those are the real players. It's not Donald Trump. It's not. But anyway, when anybody starts talking about that, they get pushed off. They get called a weird racist or something like that. You know what I mean? Tucker evolved over time. I'm not a big fan of Tucker. At first, I really didn't like him at all, and he has a lot too much to say about immigrants and all this other stuff. Of course, like somebody on Fox, you would expect. But at the same time, he evolved, and he got pretty good. And towards the end, he was really pointing out some really big stuff. And boom, they got rid of his butt really quick, right? He's gone. Deplatformed, done, gone. There's talk he's going to maybe go on Twitter with another celebrity billionaire bad boy, Elon Musk, who again, they critique really heavy, but never for the right things. Elon Musk, said some bad things about Bolivia and was willing to just sacrifice Bolivia for lithium mines. You know what I mean? Nobody remembers that. Nobody cares. He's a weirdo. He's a weirdo billionaire bad boy, but he's not John Brennan. No, siree. He's not Raytheon. He's playing around his weird angles, and he'll go along at the end of the day to keep his contracts going. He's working on some new project now. I forget what it's called. It's real ominous. It's going to take over everything. He wants it's sort of like the digital currency thing that they're all talking about. Like he's actually talking about doing it through sort of like Twitter. It'll be some rollout, some real friendly thing. Oh yeah, it's free speech on Twitter, which it's not. But and it's all in one. He's talking about some all-in-one app. Nobody's got a critique of that because we have no journalists. We have no journalism right now. So that's really the big thing. The fact that Julian Assange is rotting away for just leaking something like what Daniel Ellsberg did in the past, right? When they exposed, that the Pentagon papers, everybody was supportive. But then now that it's like, fast forward to Edward Snowden, who tells us that the NSA is really just listening to Americans, not even just ones that are talking to foreign terrorists, but just all of us. Everything's being captured by this giant surveillance state. And, that's big, that's huge. That's what we should be looking at, right? That's why they keep using the specter of weird things for us to not turn around and look and say, God, all the budget's being sucked up by these surveillance piggies. And they've sort of, combined with big tech, Palantir and Google and, at Thiel and Eric Schmidt and all these people, what the heck is going on, man? Total surveillance capitalism just happening right to us, like directly, crazy. And we've got nothing to say about it. We're like freaked out about who's wearing a mask or not, or how many vaccines you got, or, oh my God, Trump might come back. And January 6th, who protested on January 6th? They're all terrorists, Jeff, domestic terrorists, white supremacy. White supremacy is bad. Racism, of course, it's another thing. What gets better? What improves racism is when you lift all boats. When there's health care available to all workers. Somehow they all seem to get along better. When there's affordable housing. When bad credit score, you can still get housing. Right? But when you make people feel precarious, when precarity is increased and your elites are more corrupt and this, you feel it in your bones, well, then you can not trust each other more. Right? And that's another thing that they're doing. They've kind of weaponized, white supremacy is real. I mean, you can't deny that. It's part of our history. It's part of the deal, But it can be diminished or it can be weaponized and increased. And they're doing everything they can to increase it, to make it this big scary thing, and to point out people that aren't really, like that. They're just, for them to control any narrative, they get it all wrong. Whatever narrative they're controlling, whatever narrative they're pumping on you, they're wrong about it. Just know that. All right, let's take control. Let's get back. Independent media. We tell our own stories. We're our own voice. We're not going to be afraid of each other anymore. Stop being afraid of each other. Let's take back America. All right.